All right, I think we can get started here. Thanks everybody for joining for our final session of Splatfest. We got a very exciting presentation for y'all today. So I'm joined by Dave Stiles and Janai McWegan from AWeber. How are you guys doing?
Good, Trevor. Thanks for having us. Really excited to be here.
Thanks for joining. So today we're talking about everything AMP for email. We got some really cool examples for y'all. A couple quick things. If y'all have any questions during the session, feel free to throw them into the chat here, and we will try to get to them at the end. Also, please stick around till the end because a couple of you will be getting some swag. So with that in mind, I'll turn it over to y'all.
It's really great. I'm jealous of the swag. Probably cool t-shirts, huh? All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having us. My name is Dave. I'm a product manager at AWeber. We're an email service provider and one of the first to support AMP for email. I have a background in astronomy and astrophysics and sports management, and of course, email. In fact, fun fact here is my first email address that I got in college was actually my social security number, which is something that would never happen today. That's like completely the worst. But that's how far back I go with email. At AWeber, I'm a local expert on dynamic and conditional content, sender authentication, and of course, AMP for email. So I personally believe AMP for email is the future, and it's starting like right now. So we just can't wait to show you some really amazing things that you can do with it and to actually get you inspired to get started yourself. Janai.
Hi, I'm Janai. I don't have any really cool facts like Dave with his social security email, but I do have a picture here of me and Mackenzie, a local llama that my daughter loves to go visit. But my background is in design. I actually went to school for interior design before moving on to computer design. But I'm the email designer at AWeber. So I've been really hard at work updating our email templates in our global gallery for everyone to use, as well as working on some really rad new landing page templates for our landing page editor that we introduced for users to use as well. So I know that AMP for email has those in favor and those against it, and that's really okay. But my favorite concept behind AMP is to have some email standardization across the different providers.
That is a big plus.
Most definitely. So one other thing I do want to let you guys know is you guys can bookmark this page, go.aweber.com/Splatfest. That has all the information about Dave and I on it, as well as a link to the slides. And we will also include a link to the recording on that page as well. But it also includes a link to all of our demos that we're going to be going through with the code for you to use and some additional resources for you there as well.
Great. Thanks for that, Janai. Yeah, and I learned pretty quickly, if you're going to give presentations, make sure you have a designer. So that's why I always team up with Janai. She makes all my stuff look good. So right off the bat, enough intros, enough small talk. Like, we actually want to show you something that I think is really incredible. I think all of you in the audience, and Janai, I know we feel this way, that email has changed the world and can change the world. But right now, we're actually going to change something in the world with email. So I sent Janai an email earlier, and I'm going to allow her from her house to open up an email and change something in my house. Don't do it yet. So if you can see the shared screen and also Janai's video and my video, you'll see what's going to happen. Behind me, I've got a light bulb. All right, Janai, go ahead and click the light bulb in your email and let's cross our fingers. Do it one more time. Oh no.
Oh, this was working this morning. Dave, I blame you. You broke something.
Is it not connecting for real? Send it to Trevor.
The joys of doing it live.
Trevor, did we just do this for you like a second ago?
We really did.
Oh, there, it worked. You got it. All right. Whew. All right. All right. So we do have a lot of demos, and they all require like the internet and several computer systems. All right. Why don't you turn the light back off? Just do it one more time for the heck of it. So this email is connected to the internet, obviously. It connects to if this then that, where I've set up a recipe where if I hit a webhook, which is what the email is doing, it'll turn on my smart switch with a green light bulb. That's all right. Some kind of technical difficulty on somebody's end there. There it goes. Just a little delay. So the cool thing is, like, who cares that you can light a light bulb? But just think about, if you can do that, what are all the other things you can do? So I know a hot topic today is the Internet of Things. And I think email is going to be a really, really important part of Internet of Things. Imagine being able to send an email from your system, notifying a user that something has changed or needs attention. Instead of having to log in and figure something out, they may be able to take action right from that email and have it just work. So that's the first time we've ever done something like that. I think it's pretty neat, and we'll probably be building on top of that concept. But hopefully we have your attention at this point. So Janai, why don't we continue on and talk about what we're going to cover. Excuse me. All right, so next slide. So truly interactive email, as you just saw, is finally here, and we're going to show you even more possibilities. And I think you're going to fall in love with what you see. So if this presentation does inspire you, we welcome you to use our code examples and other resources to help you get started with AMP for email in your own campaigns. So first off, we'll quickly introduce you to what AMP for email is, and we'll explain why it's a safe bet for widespread adoption. And I think that's a pretty important factor for people. We'll also cover how interactivity will impact your overall marketing strategy and the actual KPIs that you're tracking, because things are going to change from that perspective. And we'll, AWeber ourselves, we're using AMP for email in our own marketing campaigns, and it's driving huge gains in engagement. So we'll show you exactly what we've been up to give you some ideas of how you can start incorporating interactivity into your campaigns. But like we said, most of our time today will be spent sharing a whopping 8 demonstrations, so like 7 more, that are meant to show you really what's possible to get you inspired, and hopefully they all work. So I think we're off to a good start though. All right, so Janai, I'll start off by talking about what AMP for email is. It's always good to give some background information. So AMP, or Accelerated Mobile Pages, was started as an open source website framework or web development framework. And its goals are to provide common website components, things like carousels and accordions that you don't want to have to code by yourself. Just be able to have those available to you right away. And to make web development easier, but also result in web pages that load almost instantly. And that's really important for the mobile world and the user experience on low power devices, especially those that are in emerging markets. So it's a tool that really can connect the rest of the world that doesn't have as much access that we all have. So I think there's actually a pretty nice social mission attached to it. Well, that's all pretty cool, the fact that it's a web framework. What's even better and more important to us is that AMP has been applied to the world of email. And I was just completely surprised when I discovered this, because it's really great. So we think it's a game-changing technology. And the bottom line is it makes email truly interactive. And you can finally start thinking about email, not just as a static flyer or a printout, but a dynamic web page or mini application. I kind of equate it to like, hey, I used to print out my MapQuest maps and take them in the car with me and try to drive around and navigate. Then there were GPS devices that you could buy for several $100s. And now everybody has Waze and Google and other things on their phone, which is much more dynamic, interactive, and can help you a lot more than just the printout ever did.
You're dating yourself there, Dave.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, right?
Yesterday, my 5-year-old was like, "Daddy, why is your beard gray?" So yeah, I got a little bit of age on me. So anyways, that said, I do believe, or I like to remind myself quite a bit that we actually are living in the future that we all kind of dreamt of as kids. And AMP for email is actually a part of this for me. So you can send an email today, and when it's open tomorrow or next week with AMP, you'll be certain that your subscribers or recipients are seeing the correct, accurate information and more importantly, the most current information. Every time you open one of these emails, it has the capability to show you real-time data. And that's way different. So you don't have to think about emails as expiring pretty much instantly. The second point is your emails are no longer read-only notices. You can actually invite your readers to complete actions inside the email while you have their attention without asking them to launch into a web browser, log in somewhere, and achieve a task. And so I think that's game-changing as well. So those are the basics, but I do want to point you to a really great presentation that was given last year at the Women of Email conference, and it was titled AMP for Email, the 411. And I just got to say, they did a really great job covering all of the basics of AMP for Email, all the pros, the cons, the challenges, and more of the origin. So that's a great place to go if you want more just background information. All right, Janai. So before we continue, I do want to point out AMP for Email is an open source project. I think there's still a misunderstanding that it's a Google technology. I mean, they were the ones that started the project, but they made it open source, and there's been a lot of participation from key players. And that's what makes me believe that the technology has a potential to become widespread, and you'll see it in everybody's inboxes at some point. Yeah, it's a unique situation where competitors who compete very fiercely are collaborating on the interest of advancing a technology together. So while it's not available everywhere today, it is catching on quickly. And you know, for those of us that were around when we had only plain text email and then HTML was introduced, some of you will remember how painful it was to get adoption for HTML email. A lot of the same things we were hearing is like, oh, now I have to have 2 versions of my email. Not everybody knows how to code HTML. What happens if I make a mistake? And then the whole story about HTML looks one way in one inbox and a different way in another inbox. So it took a lot of time to get to where we are today. And AMP is going to go through some of those same growing pains as well.
So I have a quick question, Dave.
Yeah, go ahead, Trevor.
So given that this is primarily an open source collaboration between these 4 inboxes, is best practice when sending an AMP email to only like target these users with these email clients or inboxes, or is there some?
Yeah, it's a good question. Good question. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is no. We don't try to do any targeting. Like if the email address is gmail.com, send them AMP. I think I have a slide on it a little bit later, but it does. Email is now comprised of 3 parts. You got the plain text, you have the HTML, and now you have AMP HTML. So it's just a 3rd part of the email. We refer to those as MIME parts. So the idea is to include all 3 of those, and the inbox is going to decide which recipient is going to receive which version of your email. I mean, today, I don't know if certain recipients going to get the plain text. So I better have a decent plain text version, even though it's 2021, right? And some people are forgetting to do that. So I really feel it's important that your AMP, your HTML, and your plain text are all similar and send at least the same type of message and give people the opportunity to have the same information. So yeah, that is a new distinction. You will get the feedback like, oh my gosh, I have to create 3 versions of this email now. Could it get any worse? But I know partners like Email on Acid and other email testing tools, it's going to be important to test and show your results for all 3 parts of your email on all sorts of devices. So I think we're kind of used to that, but yeah, it does change that game.
Appreciate that plug, Dave. That's great.
No problem. No problem. We all need. Nobody wants to send an email that doesn't look great in the inbox. And you know, Janai and I do a ton of testing with AMP. So any tools that can help you gain confidence in what you're delivering is really helpful. Oh yeah, so here's the slide Janai already has up. Like I said, it's comprised of plain text, HTML, and AMP. And the inbox is really going to decide who receives what. On the last slide, we did have the Microsoft Outlook icon. I do need to point out at the end of last year, they said, we're done with AMP for email. We're not going to participate any longer. And they are setting off to develop their own dynamic email tool or technology. That was a little bit unfortunate. I still have faith in the world that they'll come back to the table and will participate. And I think the most important factor is that there's a universal technology with a standard set of rules that we can all play by. That's what's going to catch on in the end, in my book. So I wouldn't be surprised, and they're welcome to come back. All right, so before I hand things off to Janai, I do want to cover one more topic, which is how does interactivity affect your conversion strategy? You can go to the next slide, Janai. So I think we all need a reminder, like we have KPIs that we've spent a lot of time setting up, collecting data, tracking, building dashboards, but AMP for email is going to be a little bit disruptor in terms of measuring KPIs. And a lot of KPIs traditionally revolve around generating web visits at the top of the funnel. But interactive email presents an opportunity to bypass much of that funnel and get a conversion, kind of go for the jugular and get that conversion in the inbox itself, because you really can do it. So my hope is that we start tracking interactions inside these emails and awarding our marketers for getting a conversion much sooner, much more quickly through dynamic email, rather than launching them back into a web page with a landing page, logging in, going through the traditional funnel. And some of our examples will show off how that can be done. So I just talked a lot. Janai, do you want to get into some of these amazing demos? We're actually going to go right into your inbox, right?
Yep.
All right.
We're going to leave the slides here for a little bit. All right.
Yeah, go ahead, Janai.
I was just going to say, and actually, Dave, you have this first demo here.
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the things Janai and I have learned about interactivity is that most people aren't expecting the email to move, to be interactive, to respond to clicks and hovers. So I think one of the things we need to start thinking about is how to cue that there is interaction available. So I just want to start off with something sort of newer to AMP for email, which is they support some of the basic CSS animations. So Janai, you can hover on, this is pretty neat, hover on those red squares. And I'm actually skewing the shape with the CSS transformation animation. And then the next one, I apply rotation. Again, spin all sorts of different directions. And then translation is similar, but instead of changing the shape, it's actually going to change its position on the screen. And these are all animated. You can do ease in, ease out, animation styles. And those are like, one or two lines of CSS to make those happen. So if you're a web animator, you're going to love this. I'm not really strong at animating things, so I just have some basic examples. Then I decided, what if I could put transformation, animation, and translations together? And just by goofing around, I came up with an animation that looks like something sort of going down the drain. And then another one that combines the two is the roll. So we'll have that cube roll across the screen and roll on back. So that's a lot of fun. Those animations are really easy to apply. Don't really take you needing to learn anything else. They're just supported. So if you can do it in HTML, you can do it here. And just one thing to point out, unfortunately, right now, you can't do keyframe animations, which would be something you would need if you wanted to have a cartoon or like something that looked like a video game. But my hope is that that is supported in the future, because I don't see why it wouldn't be. And then, yeah, so I'll have a button. If you hover on that, a gradient button color will fade in. So just people moving their mouse around, they can start to see that these are interactive elements. And for today, I just put in the Splatfest logo, and I came up with a little Splat animation. It's a little finicky. It's just splats down there.
That's cool. So Dave, is the AMP component of this particular email, are you using AMP to like call in the CSS to make these animations? Is that
no? I'm actually not. It's just the fact that AMP supports a certain set of HTML and CSS classes.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So yeah, basically the AMP for web framework is a lot more inclusive than the AMP for email set of things that are included. So the way you'll see some of the normal web interactions make it into AMP is for you to see it in the web framework first, have it be maybe retrofit for email or optimized for email. Then there'll be some testing by the community, and then it'll be released. Right now, you think of it as the email stuff is just trailing behind the web technology a little bit. Yeah, so there's no actual like special AMP tag or AMP technology you need to learn for this.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's it. That's pretty easy right out of the box. And so sort of building off of that, the next example is a like button for email. So I think, email, people sometimes say email is dead or it's dying, and, all of us, we know that's clearly not the case. It's gaining tons of popularity and really having a resurgence. But there are some things about social that we love and that would be pretty cool to have work in email. So Janai made this really amazing email template that looks like a social post. So you can share things in email similar than you do on Instagram. And she added a bunch of images, and we're using AMP Carousel so that you can browse images. You can also set that up on automation and have those slides advance automatically when the email is open to catch attention. And Trevor, kind of answering your question from before, there is a little tag called AMP Carousel, and then inside of that you just include images, and you close it up, and boom, you have a carousel. So that's super easy to implement. So that's a great thing to start off with if you're looking to get started. But as a publisher, I may not get a lot of feedback on the things I write, and not everybody leaves comments. But if they like my email, I kind of would like to know that they liked it so I can write more things like that. And I love getting that feedback on social. So what we've done here is we've added a heart button. So Janelle, will click on that. It animates in, shows that you've liked this item, and it tells you how many other people have also liked this content, which is really, really great. So the way this works is there's actually a form, just a regular old HTML form. The like button is a selector, and when it's selected, it submits the form to my server, and then I record the response, which is the fact that they liked something, so I just count that as a tally. And I also mark down their email address if I want to, and then the form responds with success and also responds with the number of people that liked that item. And that is you're able to show that in your email just by using AMP.
That's really cool. So this isn't actually posting to like the Instagram API. Like this will not show up on like your Instagram likes for this particular photo.
Right. We sort of designed it to look like an Instagram ripoff, just to give you the idea of what the interaction is going to be like. But yeah, that just goes up to my own little website where it's recording the likes. So it would be cool to build that into an email provider as an email stat. So you'd have opens, clicks, likes, and other reactions.
Yeah, that's really cool.
All right, that's the like button. Janai is going to take it even further. The like button was fun, but Instagram and other social platforms have other interactions that we thought it would be fun to experiment with. Go ahead, Janai.
Let's take a look at some of those. So one of the things I know that my friends like to do a lot on Instagram are quizzes, where they just ask silly questions. But I could also see this really being used, if I have a bunch of products on my website, selling products, and I kind of want people to guess what maybe the most popular product is, or, what the best-selling color of a product is, anything like that, just to get my readers interacting with my product and getting my audience to give a response. So this is just a fairly simple question. Can you guess my favorite animal? Mine, of course, is dogs, not dinosaurs. But I'll show you another example a little bit later that we've actually used in AWeber. You can actually have a second section pop up below the quiz based off of their response, whether they get it right or wrong, give more information on what the right answer is, or maybe provide a coupon code for those who interacted to go onto your website and actually make a purchase of that product. So what's also really neat about this example is everything is done directly in the email. This isn't going out to any other server or anything like that. Everything is happening within the email itself. So we just use AMP selectors to detect the response in the quiz. And based on what's pressed, it's going to give you that red X or the green check mark. So the CSS is really just what's changing there based off of the temp. So that's really fun. Another option that's similar are social polls, where you can get feedback on what users want to see. So I made a really quick example here. As a food blogger, I wanted to see if my followers wanted me to make a soup recipe or share my favorite dessert recipe in a video. So if I click on that here, I lost my mouse. I clearly like desserts, so I'm going to select that. And of course, we have another demo that's just going to bug out right now. There we go. So it's just going to show you how many people interacted. So 64% want to see my soup recipe and 36% want to see my dessert recipe. So I'm in that losing percentage, but that's okay. I love soup also. So we'll have that done.
This is amazing because in email, you never get to see any reactions from other people that got that email. You know what I mean? So for the first time, you know, if you're trying to build a community around your blog or your YouTube channel, you want to build community among your members. And so this is a really neat way to see that other people are participating, you're involved, you feel like you're part of something. I think that's a really neat element that we can add to email now.
It's so fun. So this one is an HTML form that's being submitted with 2 AMP selectors. And when you choose one, the form's submitted to the server replies with the results that are shown in the email. And then we use AMP mustache, which shows the success and the data of who's clicking on what. So you saw initially when it wasn't working, that was the AMP mustache actually showing the not successful reply. So that is a fun demo. So Dave's going to show you guys the next one.
All right. Yeah. So this demo is a little bit newer, and I would like to do a lot more with it. I would say this is the first demo that we did that kind of knocked my own socks off. I was like, I can't believe that we just did this. I'm one ahead of you. We'll come into that one next, but this one's pretty cool too. So this is basically, we want to show off that you can grab data from the internet, from the cloud, from your own system, from any API. So certain data just needs to be up to date, or it's going to be completely irrelevant. And that's really important, especially for this example, financial investment data. But it could be, you know, healthcare data, other types of data that's important to be up to the minute. So this email right here, as you open it, it shows you the current stock prices. So it shows you the current data on load. But the stock market is moving every second while we're talking here. So there's a refresh button, which goes ahead and updates those numbers as long as the market's open. And you can see the numbers change there. I guess everything's going negative, Janai. So, but what's cool is if I also want to look up the value of some other stocks, maybe I want to buy something, or my buddy's telling me I should invest in his cool hedge fund, I can click on the button there below and we'll show off a sidebar. So this is an AMP element, which adds a sidebar to your email, which is like, I can't even believe it. You've just never seen that before. And you can type in additional stock symbols there, hit submit, and it's going to search in real time for the values of those stocks. You can add in a couple more.
That's really cool. And this is queuing off of the Robinhood API, Dave. Is that right?
It's not. We actually did a mock-up for Robinhood, hoping that they'd want to make their emails like this. But I just found a free financial data API, and I wrote a very small PHP script just to authenticate the API. and do a little search, and then it just responds with a JSON output document. And AMP works really well with that type of data. So I was just able to refer to, like, I want the open price and I want the net change for the day, and just drop those in the email. So it's really, really simple.
Yeah.
And then anytime you ask for a refresh, it just updates the data.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that's financial data. Like, a lot of you may not care about financial data, but you may have other data that is important to you or to your customer base. You can give them that data in real time, and then also give them an opportunity to act on that data.
A quick question, Dave, just from the chat here.
Yeah.
Someone asked, can the stock example work with XML or RSS feeds, or must it be API driven?
Yeah, so basically I use the API to get a JSON response, which is very similar to XML or RSS. So I think if you had an RSS feed, you'd have to do a couple things. In both cases, you need to basically supply a CORS header so that the email has secure access to your data on your server. But then you'd also want to convert it to JSON so that AMP can work with it really, really easily. So in my mind, those formats are all pretty much the same. I don't know that AMP can work with different formats. I've just been using JSON. But I think in the future, it probably wouldn't care as much about if it's XML or JSON or RSS. But right now, I just do a little conversion if it's necessary. And Python and PHP allow you to just take one and convert it to the other, pretty much no problem.
Cool.
All right, cool. All right, on to the next demo, which I was starting to oversell. But this is, once we got stock data and some other data from other places, I was like, what about an e-commerce store? Like, could I put an entire e-commerce store in an email? And the answer is yes. So this is a Shopify store. I just made one for myself. There is a real company called Leatherhead Sports, and they sell the coolest stuff. They have like vintage basketballs that Naismith would have used, and then really cool apparel. They sell like handmade leather baseballs, just some really, really neat stuff. So I figured I'll use them as my test pool. So I made myself a little shop. I used the Shopify API, the storefront API, and to make a feed of products. And here they are. So for each product, I created a little HTML template in AMP just to lay out a featured image, the title of the product and the price, and a link back to my store where they can buy it. And each image is actually in an image carousel. So I thought this was a lot of fun. Every single image you can actually browse. I know if I get an email in the inbox, it's like, do you like this shirt? But it comes in a lot of different styles. Like, it would be nice to look at those before you just like shove it off and move on. So that's interactive. I think I have those on auto scroll, so some of those are moving around. And then Janai was showing at the top of the email, I included a drop-down menu to filter the results. Now this filter is not just filtering what's on the page, it's going to my store and fetching products that are in the category apparel or baseball or basketball. And once you hit basketball real quick, the other cool thing about this is your pricing is always up to date. Your inventory is always up to date. And if you put something on sale, I have an example of the backboard there. It's quite expensive. So I put it on sale for $600. That's going to show up in your emails too. So if you have a sale and the sale ends, you're no longer going to get a call saying like, I've got my email right here. It says I get 20% off. And you have to explain to them, well, that expired 2 weeks ago. They don't care. They still want their discount. Now, when they open their email, they're going to get the accurate information every single time. And I just love the browsability of this example, just being able to look around for different products. You're much more likely, once you find something you kind of like, to then go to their website and make a purchase.
That's really cool. I really wish I had this back when I was doing e-commerce emails.
Right? Yeah.
A lot more successful. So do you think, Dave, at any point we'll get with AMP for email, like this framework, could we go all the way through to like checkout with one of these emails? Do you think we'll ever get to that point, or is there too many?
I know, right?
Concerns?
I mean, dating myself again, I do remember sending some guy my credit card to buy something, plain text email, like, 20 years ago. which was the worst idea. I think that will be possible. And the reason I say that is, a lot of payment apps authenticate on your phone. So if the email knows who you are and your phone knows who you are, I could see, like, I could add things to the cart from this email. That would be no problem. You could view a cart from this email. That would be no problem. And then I could see clicking, one of those one-click payment options.
Yeah.
And have it open up your app, and then you just approve the transaction on your phone, and then you're done.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's in very near reach.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'd love to see who's going to be the first to do that. Challenge accepted. Great. So that's e-commerce. What do we got next, Janai?
So our last example is putting a form within an email. So again, I just created a little email that they registered for an event. Thanks for registering. And we just want to collect some information so we can send them some really cool swag. So this is all within the email. You just ask for a few pieces of information. So we've asked for their name, where we're going to send that swag. What's your favorite color, just for fun, because maybe our shirts come in different colors. And then also what shirt size that they would need. And then the one thing that we're not asking for is their email, because we sent them the email. So we already have that information, and we're going to recollect that from a hidden field that'll be passed when the form is submitted. So now that I filled all that out, I'm just going to hit submit. And it's just going to give me a fun little gift to let them know that we got their submission for their swag. And then I broke my message last night, but it did say, thanks for your submission, and you'll see your swag soon. So let's go into a little bit about how we actually set this email up.
Yeah, I think this is a really good one for people to try themselves. Automatic, it's pretty easy to do. Janai, just keeping an eye on time. I think we should just show them where to go to learn about how to do that, and then we're available to help people. So this is a Medium article I wrote, and it takes you step by step of adding a form to your email. So the basic steps, Janai, you want to just mention what the basic steps are to get that done?
So the basic steps are you're going to set up in a form within Oranju. I always say the name wrong, but so I just have my swag email form here. You're just going to need to set up a few things on the form, the information you want to collect, and the other important thing to change for them is the ID for each of those input fields. And also for your hidden fields, you want to make sure you're collecting their email address. And then under settings, you can put in that thank you message, as well as you're going to need your form submission, or your form ID.
Form ID, yeah.
Yeah.
So Orangu is AMP ready. So I worked with them about a year ago to try to make this happen for the first time, and they just made their platform AMP ready. So Janai will go into HTML and build a form like you normally would on a web page or in an email, and she'll just specify those field IDs. And the form submission is a link to Orangu with your form ID, and that's it. It'll just work.
So in Dave's article, he outlines, the form that you need to use. It gives you that URL that you just paste your form ID into. And then you just need to pull over your input fields. So you have your hidden one for email address, and then whatever other ones you want to do. So you can do inputs, text areas, drop-down menus, checkboxes, anything that you would on a normal form you can put into your email. But yeah, we have all those instructions laid out for you. So I'd love to see some emails with that form put in there. It was one of the biggest things that when we started doing, customers loved interacting with and giving us feedback.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good one to start with. All right, Janai is going to talk about, some time remaining and try to leave some time for questions. the ways that our marketing team, Janai works with them pretty closely, have started to use AMP interactivity in our marketing emails and what that experience has been like.
Yeah, so I'll go through these. These are just things that we've actually done. We've actually sent to our readers. So the first was, when we started looking at AMP and how we could use it, our main goal was to increase our engagement. We started sending these emails in October of 2019. And the biggest thing is was getting people to realize that they were interactive emails. So we actually did a little badge and a GIF that we ended up putting into there to let users know that they were interactive and to feel free to check them out. And like I said, the first one we did was a form, and one of the most amazing pieces of feedback we got is immediately was somebody was just like, "What wizardry is this? Who fills out a form in an email?" It was crazy. So we were happy to see that. And since we've started this, our engagement with AMP for email has gone up 225% from our first AMP email that we've sent.
Trevor, I know you guys wrote an article about AMP for email and whether or not it could drive engagement. I think you saw similar results in that post.
Yeah, I think any type of differentiation you can do in your email really does help with engagement overall. So yeah, I would say test it out. Why not? Especially when you can do cool things like you guys have just shown. It's worth testing for sure.
Yeah, so our biggest spikes were when AMP for email was accepted on mobile apps and devices, and also right after Outlook decided to cooperate. And we haven't seen any negative effects since they've kind of backed out. So that's a positive as well. And we do just expect the stat to increase as even more mailbox providers start to support AMP in the future. So here are live examples of what we've did. We always had an Ask Us Anything About Email Marketing in our emails. And previously, the HTML version just had a link that went to a form on a website that they could fill out. But we decided to put that all right within the email. Why take them away? So this was a great way to get feedback. We've gotten feedback anywhere from people asking questions about the articles in it, asking generic email marketing questions, or any other kind of question about their AWeber account. We respond to them all, and we read them after every email that we send. So after the form, we decided to do that in addition to our sentiment widget that we include at the bottom of all of our emails. So previously this click, again, when you clicked on happy or sad, it would take you over to another website to get more feedback and see why you had clicked that. And again, we decided to keep that all within the email. And in addition, we're showing you how many other people have interacted with the sentiment widget as well. So is it just you that's doing it? How many other people are happy about the email or sad about the email or took that action to make a click? And then we also threw a form in there, because people can always say why they chose one of those feelings and what we can do to improve our newsletter going forward. And then after that, we did the social aspect as well. So we included an email marketing poll just before Black Friday to gauge how our readers were going to be adjusting their campaigns for the holidays. So we had asked a simple question: are you going to send a Black Friday or a Cyber Monday email campaign? And the results were actually kind of surprising. This is a GIF that was taken, I'm not sure when, but the responses were actually more about 50-50%. And that certainly surprised me because I thought a ton of people sent emails for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But apparently that's not so much the case. So it also allowed other people to see in real time what other people were doing and what they were selecting. So from there, we did our own email marketing quiz, where we asked, what is an email tag? Give a few answers to see what people would choose. And here you can also see our little powered by AWeber interactive element that we added to let people know that they could interact with it and would not be taken out of the email. And you can also see that once a selection is made, there's a section at the bottom that pops up and says what the correct answer is, more information about what an email tag is, and then a link to an article to get more information if needed. But this is where you could have a coupon code that would display instead, and get people to go and purchase your product. And again, these quizzes are all done right within the email. There's no going to any additional APIs. And then of course we showed you too the AMP carousel. So we actually send out 4 times a year a free set of seasonal animated GIFs that our customers can use in their newsletters. Previously, we'd only show a single GIF in the newsletter and link back to the website where you could browse the entire set. Nowadays, we've standardized that to include the AMP carousel, and it gives users the opportunity to browse the entire set or most of the set, and have them then go back to the website to download them for themselves. But we have it set so that it auto rotates and users can see right off the bat that animation and interactivity within the email. And by the way, we liked this option so much that we actually put it right into our drag and drop email editor. So you can do this in AWeber without ever having to touch the AMP code. And then our last example, over to Dave.
Yeah, so we wanted to actually incorporate AMP into our SaaS platform. So whenever our customers send a broadcast email, we send them an email a few hours later, letting them know how the broadcast is performing. So we decided to make an AMP version of this email. So each time they open it, the data automatically fetches the latest stats for their opens and their link clicks. There's a refresh button if they want to refresh it, but honestly, it's unnecessary. It's always up to date. And our customers love it. They can always just keep an eye on their broadcast just by checking their phone real quick without having to log in and navigate. So that's a real first application. And I think as a general note, it's probably where you'll start to see AMP in your inbox as a consumer the most, is by companies that send email to their customers. I think they'll start to make those more and more interactive and more useful for you. So that's it. That's how we are using AMP for email at AWeber, and that's everything, Trevor.
Cool. Thanks.
Take questions.
That was really great. Yeah, that was awesome. Great examples, great use cases. So we have a number of questions here.
Let's do it.
So I'm just going to dive in. So first question, even with MIME types, is there a way to include fallback content for inboxes that don't support AMP?
Yeah, so basically the point is if the inbox doesn't support AMP, your AMP part is just irrelevant. It's not going to be shown. So there's nothing in the AMP version that you need to do to fall back. You just want to make sure your HTML version is the fallback. So you can't really think of it as like part of your email is AMP and part's not. It's sort of all or nothing. So your fallback will be the HTML and plain text versions.
Got it. So you got to plan for that when you're developing the email.
That's right.
Okay, cool. So another question from the live stream. How different is AMP email development from HTML email development? I assume they're pretty similar, right? It's just getting used to the syntax for AMP to include the right tags.
Yeah, they are pretty similar. There's a few additional tags that you need to know, but other than that, it's basically the same. It's actually kind of a little nicer too, because you can usually stick within divs and you don't need to follow the table format that's kind of outdated for Outlook.
Right, so we can simplify it a great deal, actually,
yeah,
just by having cleaner markup. Yeah.
Cool.
And I'll just add to that too, like it's been nice for Janai and myself to pair. So if you're already working on a team with a engineer and designer and product person, it's going to be really, really easy. I was able to like get some back-end stuff ready, prototype it, and then just hand it to Janai, and she comes back in 20 minutes and it's beautiful. I'm like, this is great, let's go. So keep working with your team.
Nice. So we're getting a number of questions asking, does AMP work for my ESP essentially? So like one question is, do platforms like Eloqua and Marketo support AMP for email? Are there any restrictions based on your ESP that you know of?
Yeah, basically what you're going to look for, I can't speak to those two because I haven't checked recently, but the bar is pretty low for them to support it. You really, if they don't already, you just need to ask them to support including the AMP part, right? So you can have your plain text editor, your HTML editor, and just a place to copy and paste in some AMP code. As long as they can send it, that's all you need.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern would be if they strip the code before they before they sent it. So I assume if you're able to edit HTML in your ESP or paste the HTML, like AMP should be fine,
It should be, but yeah, they do need a separate place for you to paste the AMP version.
Okay, cool. So another question, does AMP support JavaScript?
How to answer that question? AMP is based on JavaScript. So at the top of your AMP message, you will have some JavaScript includes. You can't include any of your own JavaScript at this point. I think it's really just a security and performance issue. But the whole AMP framework is like, the philosophy is I don't want you to have to include your own JavaScript. We want to give you all the tools to do those things right out of the box. So with that limitation comes ease of use, I would guess. So that's a pro for a lot of people, and I'm sure it's a negative for some as well.
Yeah. Cool. Next question. Have you seen companies or brands in regulated industries like healthcare, financial, that are doing cool things with AMP for email? Does AWeber have any of those type of clients in that?
Janai, do you know of anything?
No, not off the top of my head.
Yeah, I haven't.
We did.
Go ahead.
We did work with a few of our customers a bit ago, where we were trying to get them set up for AMP and creating the messages for them and stuff. But past those examples, I haven't seen any others that I have a direct example of.
Yeah, seems like to me the biggest barrier would just be handling PII and other sensitive information in those industries. So you'd probably have to be pretty superficial if you're going to do AMP in those type of industries. Some of the examples that we're doing, like feedback, polls, that type of thing, and not even touch the other.
I could see because there's some level of trust built in that maybe smartwatches and fitness bands might send you an email saying like, hey, your heart rate's a bit high. Do this meditation and watch your heartbeat slow down in real time.
You should go to a hospital.
Yeah. Click here. You could click here to send the ambulance, but stuff like that. I think we will see it in those industries, but they are definitely, like you said, privacy and security minded. So they're going to be very careful about how they implement it.
Yeah. Okay, so next question. Do you have any example code of how we can call the APIs in an AMP email? So we will be providing these CodePen examples, right?
That's right. What you won't see in the examples is what happens on my server. And in a lot of cases, I'm just doing two things. I'm setting the CORS header, which says I'm allowing a request to come from an email that I sent. And after that, it's like a line or two of PHP just to call the API. And then I return a JSON response, and AMP can then read that response and print it out in the email. So I'd be happy to collaborate and get some code samples out for how we did some of these examples.
Cool.
Yeah, just get right in touch with me. That's no problem.
Cool. So next question, do you see AMP being used to tie in gaming sites? I don't know if they mean like gambling gaming or just video gaming, but I think there's really no limitations here, right? Like you can use AMP across industries as long as you're not touching sensitive data.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see full games happening in email, but also maybe you're playing on your console for 2 hours and then you leave, and then your game sends you a note and saying like, hey, you're getting attacked from this quadrant, and hit this button to do a counterattack until you can come back. like you said, sky's the limit. So
Yeah.
creative.
So here's a really good question that's pretty relevant. With Apple disabling open tracking, is there a concern Google will limit real-time content in AMP due to the same privacy concerns? So it feels like that's always a risk, but since this is kind of Gmail's or Google's baby, it seems like they wouldn't want to limit. And also their business model is kind of built off of tracking.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't believe right now AMP will render in an Apple inbox. So I think they're going to show up late to the game and be kind of strategic about when they do participate. And I would imagine what would happen after this fall when they add some of the security. Apple's clearly taking a privacy first approach, which I think will be pretty popular to a lot of people. And I think that's also a good challenge for AMP to fit within a good privacy framework. So it can still be interactive, but there's enough security that it can still be personalized.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So next question, does including AMP have an impact on deliverability in providers that do not support AMP? So I think it's kind of what we talked about. You just fall back to the HTML version if your inbox doesn't support AMP.
Yeah, we debated this internally a lot. Like, should AWeber always be sending the AMP part, even if we know that it's not an authorized sender or it's going to an inbox that doesn't support it? Should we strip it for the customer? And we talked to some of the inbox providers and generally got an answer saying, like, I can never tell you exactly how it's going to impact deliverability, but we don't see that as a negative to include it. So that's word of mouth, I guess. But I think doing some experimentation will help you answer that question. We haven't seen any deliverability impact for including AMP. In fact, AMP gets you more engagement, and more engagement helps deliverability quite a bit.
Yeah. I think the same, golden rules of deliverability still apply with AMP emails, right? You cultivate a list that has people who want to engage with your content, and you're going to see more success there. So
you're right.
Okay, cool. Go ahead,
you
Jeanette.
do also have to set up with Google to be an authorized AMP sender. So it actually helps your deliverability in at least Gmail's inboxes.
Right. Along with, all right, so to become an authorized sender, Janai's right, you have to register with several of the inboxes right now. They have a unifying form, so you can fill out one form and get approved across the board. I think that's got to go away soon, so you don't have to register. The other requirements are that you're set up with sender authentication, which means you're doing DKIM, SPF, and writing on the wall says you're going to need a DMARC policy of reject or quarantine also. So I probably just lost a lot of the audience right there. But in terms of the security questions, that really helps, give accountability to the sender. So if I'm sending garbage or I'm trying to steal somebody's information or get around security, like, it's pretty clear who's sending that email and who's responsible for it. So it's a high security bar to pass to be able to send AMP, which makes it hard for adoption, but ultimately is a good thing for security.
Yeah, totally. So a few more questions here. So is AMP for email HIPAA compliant to serve PII and PHI information? So I think we kind of touched on that earlier. It's probably best, to not include any of that information in AMP for email.
That's right. Yeah, just think of it as an email, and it's really up to the sender to make sure they're following those laws.
Yep. So a couple of questions related to tracking engagement. So one question is, like, how is engagement reported on AMP interactions? Another similar question is, does the analytics for AMP emails that you show here, for instance, engagement metrics at an email level, but also the actions what the user is doing with the website? So I think that kind of is dependent on how you build AMP and like how it's reporting back to your server too, right? Collecting that information or that data back there to really track engagement and how people are interacting.
Right, yeah. Janai, do you have any thoughts on that?
So we also adjust our click tracking, so we can see all of our links and our emails have variable on the end of them. So we know if users are clicking on a plain text email, if they're clicking in the HTML email, or if they're clicking on the AMP email. So we get all of that click tracking back just as you would for normal engagement. And then the actual interactive elements, if it's submitted through a form, that's submitting that data back to us through Arenju, or if it's going to Dave's server, we collect that as well. So it's not necessarily all together, but you can certainly track the interactions and engagements for the different types of emails.
Cool. Well, I think that is all the questions. Again, so we put the link to the AWeber landing page for this, so you can go get the code, pen the examples, and more information there. It's go.aweber.com/splatfest, splat-fest. And we'll be sure to follow up with an email to registrants here so y'all can go visit that page to get all this information. So now I think it's time to announce our swag winners here. So thank you all for sticking around all the way through. So our winners are Renee Harlan and Frank Bridges. Congratulations, y'all.
All right.
So we'll be reaching out to you via email to get your contact info. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you so much, Janai, for joining us. This has been awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun, and great talking to you today. And if people have questions, definitely reach out to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks everybody for joining and for participating in Splatfest. We do have one final Twitter space hangout that's happening, I believe, this afternoon. So if you go follow Gilda Hilaire on Twitter at justgilda, you should be able to get notified of when her Twitter space goes live, and they'll be doing a fun Q&A and more chances to win swag there and that type of thing. So go check it out for sure. Thanks again, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
See ya.